Hello, it's lovely to be back in Cornwall. I like it so much I've planned to spend the rest of the week here after today, so it'll be good. Yeah, so pathworking. It all started a long time ago in a galaxy far from here. So, what is it? Well, there is no single definition really. It means all sorts of things to all sorts of people. And as Judith kindly said, the original name of the book that I brought out was Pathworking. There are also people who have brought out books on creative visualization since, and there's a certain interchange of names. To me, they're subtly different. So, in my own mind, a creative visualization sets up a sort of meditative sort of space, a place, describes an area or whatever. And for instance, I could say, right, imagine, you're in the Caribbean on a beach and the palm trees swaying and you've got a tequila sunrise in your hand and the waves gently lapping, right? And you can think, oh yeah, that's lovely, right? That's a creative visualization. I've made that picture in your head, yeah? Now, if I then take that picture and start to alter it and get you to do things within that, and I say, well, actually, now, before your very eyes, you've changed into a crab and scuttle off, that then starts to become a pathworking. You're actually working some sort of dodgy route through this meditation. And so that's my sort of rough rule of thumb definition of what they're about. And I think we have to remember, because it's often forgotten, that a creative visualization, it can be quite a negative thing. It doesn't have to be a lovely sun-kissed island. How many of you, like me, watch police dramas and detective things and, take a bet on the body count in Midsummer Murders? I do. Between me and Sue up there, my wife, we'll go, what do you reckon it's going to be this week? And I'll go 3, and she says, nah, 4. No, you send the policeman in these things going, right, Sonny, you better start telling the truth, yeah? Because otherwise you're facing 25 years in jail. You're only a little guy and it's going to be pretty hard in there, You're young, blue-eyed and blonde, and there's going to be other guys in there who are going to find that very attractive. That's really horrible, but that is a creative visualization in work, isn't it? The policeman setting up that thing in the guy's head to think, God, I don't want that. All right, I'll tell him the truth and tell him it was Harry done it, So it's what you make of it. It's not essentially good, it's not essentially bad. To me, within a pathworking, I like to see certain elements. I think the first one that everybody agrees with, and I'm quite aware that lots of people since have done pathworkings in conference settings like this, where they've sent you down and so on and but there's always that essential getting down bit, whatever you like to call it. We're going down 10 steps or whatever, and relaxation exercises to get you in that relaxed frame of mind. The nice thing about it, though, is you're still in control. Any time you like, you can open your eyes and go, well, this is a load of crap, isn't it? So there's that element. And I think the fact that the people who do it are still in control, it's not hypnosis. It might use elements of hypnosis within it, I suppose, but it's not hypnosis. You are in control of it. Then you're looking for a basic scenario. And I want to talk about setting up a pathworking, not just doing one. I will do a short one with you towards the end of the talk, but I'd like to talk about setting them up, because I do sometimes hear things when I'm listening that jar. When I set up a pathwork in the scenario, I do it in quite detail, to start off with. So if it's a door in front of you, it's got a little keyhole, very old-fashioned keyhole. And there's planks which are quite rough, but there's a smudge of red paint on the top right-hand corner. And it's one of those pointy doors that you're going to go through, yeah? So at that point, it's quite detailed, because what I want you to do is block everything else out of your mind. You know, forget the sound of the bar, forget the retail therapy you're going to indulge in directly on over, or even during it. Forget the smell of the person's perfume from the seat behind you, or the BO from the other seat, or whatever. I want you to block all those things out. So very often in the Pathworking, we will try and eliminate some of those. I will say, for instance, make sure your phones are off. They are off, aren't they? We'll set the stun or whatever. Because I have this policy, if your phone goes off in my talks, people will tell you this has happened. I'll warn people beforehand, if a phone goes off, it disturbs my psychic vibrations, and I therefore have to neutralise it by putting it into a bucket of water. And I've done that once, because I'd warned them. Or alternatively, I'll come and talk in your phone over your shoulder and go to your husband or your wife, "No, put the phone down, darling, and come back to bed." That normally works. So we're eliminating those noises of the doorbell, the plumbing sounds, the whatever. If it's in your house, we're eliminating the cooking smells or whatever. You know, nice and quiet and peaceful. Maybe illuminating bright lights and having slightly dim lights. I like the fact that it's slightly dim in here. It's always nicer, you know. Maybe in your own house you'd use candlelight or something. So you've got all of those things helping. You might also use some music to block out some of the noise of traffic going past and that. I'm not going to use music today, but you might be. I always think you have to be very careful about what music you use, though. You know, it's got to be appropriate to the Pathworking for a start, you know. Sorry, but I don't want to go back to a medieval castle with heavy metal in the ears, much as I like AC/DC. And it's got to be long enough to last for the Pathworking as well. One thing I'll always warn you about Pathworkings is time messes about in them. You might go down for 10 minutes and come back thinking that you've been there half an hour, or vice versa. You find that in magical places as well, don't you? Go somewhere like Wistman's Wood and think you've only been there half an hour. I fell for that one. So, little bit of background. I was just checking the date, 1992, it seems a long time ago. Yeah, there was myself and a guy called Pete Sawyer in Ipswich set up a Pathworking group. He'd done a bit in London before, and I got a bit of an idea from things that I'd spoken to people about. And so we set up this little Pathworking group in my little end of terrace house in Ipswich that I was living in at the time. And I had up to 14 people in my front living room, which you could fit onto about a tenth of this stage. And it was people, nobody paid, but somebody bring a packet of biscuits and somebody else would bring some insect sticks and, you know, somebody bring a couple of candles or something, you know. And so we all sort of contributed in that way. And then myself and Peter done the actual Pathworkings themselves. But over a number of weeks, we taught the other people to go and do their own ones, you know, and bring them to us. So we got a go at experiencing them and so on, and got a bit of variety into it. This thing was very successful. It ran about a couple of 3 years until I actually moved away from Ipswich. And it developed into all sorts of ways we never envisaged. Most of the people that were in the group were pagans, but not all of them. We had a couple of Christians, we had a Buddhist, we had an atheist, and so on. But it all worked out all fine together, and it developed its own flavour. And then, as we hoped, eventually some of them went off and formed their own little group, so it became, you know, the mother of some other Pathworking groups. So that was back in 92. And one of the things that people said was, isn't there a book where you can find out more of this? And no, there's a paragraph in that book and there's 2 lines in that book. And that was about it at the time, back in 92. So I fancied the idea of writing a book. So I wrote it, but Pete Sawyer contributed to it with some of his parts as well. And so we brought out this book called Pathworking. And because it was the only book of that name, it's done very well. Originally, it was a little photocopy thing, and then it was brought out by a publisher and so on. It's sold over the years. And people have used it in all sorts of ways that I never envisaged. Like midwives relaxing mums-to-be with it. That have told me afterwards, oh yeah, I use it all the time, you know, and so on. I think the oddest one that I ever had was, I think it was about 5 years ago now. I was at an event like this, not here but elsewhere, and there was a lady who a bit stuck out from the audience a bit. You know, I mean, let's face it, most of us are dressed sort of a little bit hippie-fied, you know, and so on. This lady wasn't. I reckon she was about 50-ish, and she was in a tweed suit, and she'd got a hat. You know, don't see many people in a hat now, and very, no nonsense, hello, you know, sort of thing. I'd imagine her running, you know, the Women's Institute, you know, or nationally, you know, or something, sort of slightly bossy. And she came up to you, oh, you're Mr. Jennings then? Right, well, yes, use your book, I'm a prison visitor. Prisoners can't go out to see the trees, so I take them into them with your book. Very good, thank you, bye. And off. What was that? I think it was a compliment, but, you know. And I had never envisaged, well, because when we started, there weren't pagan prison visitors, pagan chaplains into prisons and so on. But she'd got her use for it, and good luck to her, you know. And in fact, later I became a pagan chaplain, and I used to do that as well, because it was a way of doing things when you're inside. So, and we never realised that it'd get sold abroad as well. You know, it's got things like in there, like English telephone boxes and so on, you know, which might not make a lot of sense to somebody who bought it in Japan, you know. And one of the things this year, because I got the copyright back and because it got a bit outdated, I updated it. So it's this one now, which is for sale on the stall over there. It says he, plug. Sort of realised when I was updating, you know, there's things like telephone boxes, and the telephones have dials on them in the old book. You know, not press buttons. So it needed updating and some new pictures, and you know, and also printed a bit bigger so you can see it in candlelight, because it was one of the criticisms. You know, if you're going to read a Pathworking, you need to be able to see it in subdued lighting. So this is in deliberately large print for those who want to see it in subdued lighting, or people of my age who are getting, you know, a bit specky anyway. So the other thing that you've got to think about with Pathworking is, do you do it solo or in a group? Some people have only got the chance to do it solo because they live in the middle of nowhere, don't know anybody else, are barely no mates, you know. But that's got advantages, because you can do it completely for yourself, you can do it when you want, you haven't got to arrange it with other people, and you can do it completely to your own flavour, you know, there's no rules. You can do it for hours, or you can do it for 5 minutes, and so on. So that has its advantages, but some people have a problem actually running the path and going into the path at the same time. It comes with a bit of practice. You can do it, but it takes a little bit of practice to be able to dip in and out, both sort of speaking the path through and actually living it as such. So there's that side to it. Whereas with a group, you know, there's somebody there telling you you're going down a garden path or whatever it is, or you're leaping off a cliff. Yeah, that's good, that one. Good Cornish cliff, of course. And you can swap it around and you get more variety. The other thing that you get out of it, which I think is very important, is if you've done a Pathworking and you come back up, is the fact that you might want to discuss it. You know, well, I saw this symbol down there, I've got no idea what it meant, you know. Anybody got any ideas, you know, sort of thing. Now, I think we have to be quite sensitive about this, because it's very personal stuff for a lot of people. And what you don't want is people jumping in, oh yeah, I know exactly what that is. That means, you know, that you had a corrupt childhood and you're about to murder your husband, you know. No, we don't need that. But, you know, just something to sound off And of course, the bigger the group, the longer that's going to take. And the longer you need, as a group leader, to control that. You don't want people starting up private conversations in the corner while little Mary Ann, who's got a very quiet voice, is saying, well, I had this deeply traumatic experience down there and there was this man. You know? So that's where you got to bother about the group dynamics. And however lovely the place is and the people are, you will have group dynamics because you can't have a group without them. Hands up any coven leaders or heathen facilitators who've never had any problems with any of the people reacting against each other in their groups. Yes, I can see you all mentally putting your hands up. Yeah. So yeah, that's very important. You've got to think about the group dynamics, and also if they each take 2 minutes to tell you about their path when they come up, and you've got 20 people there, that's 40 minutes. Yeah? And some might take considerably more than 2 minutes, but I'm just, you know, as an example. So you're going to have to maybe control the size of the group, the nature of the group. Do you want it to be all pagan so that you can have really witchy, pagany sort of pathworkings and so on, or do you want it to be more general? Do you want it to be a bit more experimental, or do you want it to be fairly straight down the line, simple stuff? There's a lot to think about. And of course, if you're facilitating, you know, with a group of people, you know, is it going to be in somebody's house? Do they mind all these people coming in? You know, what's the house rules, you know, and so on. If you're renting a room, well, how are we going to pay for that room? It shouldn't come out of the organiser's pocket, you know, we should all... So we'll pay a couple of quid or something. So, what about refreshments, you know? Tea and biscuits, you know? Well, you know, is somebody going to bring the biscuits? Somebody be on tea duty afterwards? You've got to think of all those practical things as well, you know? Even fire precautions and stuff. So, yeah. So we're eliminating... So we're eliminating all the distractions there, yeah? We're also preparing the people to get in the right mood and feeling comfortable with each other, to not be distracted by sounds, by bells, by smells, you know, or even the rather attractive person sitting opposite them in the room, male or female, or both. Believe me, I had that problem with in the small groups I used to have. And much more of a problem after they got together when they broke up and still wanted to come to the group. Yeah, great that. So we're going to do those essential things. We're going to use a particular voice, whether you're male or female. And this particularly with females with shrill voices, you need to lower it down an octave or two. Like this, yeah, because I had years of practice on radio. People used to think I was dead sexy which is why I did radio, not TV. Yeah, and we want to get people settled down because inevitably, you know, if they meet up once a week, once a month, they're catching up with the news of each other and I got this new handbag and my Harry's got a prize at school and, you know, all those things. Yeah, they want a chance to do that. It should be social. It should be enjoyable. And that's one of the things I always impress. It should be enjoyable. You know, you're not being paid to do it, so you might as well enjoy it. And so on. Yes, you can get deep esoteric knowledge out of it. Yes, you can get an understanding of the universe and why it means 42. But also, you can treat it as pure entertainment, and there's nothing wrong with that. You ever thought of using a pathworking as entertainment? Right. I'll give you an excerpt from one. You are sitting in a large theatre with lighting. Ooh, it's realistic, this pathworking, isn't it? Up on the stage is your favourite act. Down the Bard. He's halfway into his set clean sword, pictures you between the eyes, and beckons you to the stage. Yes, tonight you are the start of the Dan the Bard band, and he is inviting you, just you personally, to come and sing all the harmonies with him on stage, because he knows. He says take off all your clothes, but ignore that bit. Right. Now, why shouldn't you have a Pathworking where you envisage a place? I mean, you might have a different flavour than that, you know, somebody ordinary like the Beatles or something. You know. Genesis, early period with David. Sorry. But why shouldn't you imagine yourself on stage? You know, you are that lead guitarist with AC/DC. Or you are acting Othello with Ralph Richardson and so on, you know. Or Dear Dicky Boy. There's no reason why you shouldn't have a Pathworking like that. And enjoy yourself, have a bit of fun. Yeah. There was one Pathworking, you'll find it in the book, which the group that I had in Ipswich became a bit addicted to. And we laughed and called it eventually the Psychic Archers. And it sounds funny, but it wasn't in the end. What I do have to say that one or two of the people who were in the Pathworking group in Ipswich originally were into role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons and that. So on another night, some of them might meet up and be orcs and dragons and wizards and things, you know, right? Anyway, done a Pathworking one week, and I said, okay, you're up on a little hillside and you're looking down at a quaint little village with thatched cottages and a village well and, you know, a blacksmith shop and all that. Right, if you look down, your clothes is the same as the people in the village, it's a bit quaint and old-fashioned, and you're going to wander down into the village and they will recognise you there. You live there. So go and see your friends in the village. And I left them for a bit, and then I come back. And as soon as I came back, everybody was jabbering at once. Oh, it's fantastic. I am actually the blacksmith. You know, whatever. You know, I've got a wife and 3 kids there, you know. And the next time we had a Pathworking night, they were going, do the village one again, Pete. Do the village one again, you know. And I had to cut it out in the end, or sort of ration it, because people were getting alternate lives there. I think it started getting worrying when somebody said they were being sued for divorce, but it was a lovely thing. But it shows that, you know, a Pathworking doesn't have to be on an isolated subject. You know, a once-off. You can continue a thing on. And there's actually a thing which I've carried on. I don't very often do Pathworkings now. I do them occasionally by myself, sometimes in bed before I go to sleep or whatever, or if I'm sitting by myself I might do one. But the one that I still do, back from those days in the 1990s, early 1990s, is something that we started to call Citadel Pathworkings. I'm not sure how it really got that name, but it's all sanctuary, really. I got people to build within their imaginations a sanctuary that was their place. And it could be a little shed in a wood, or it could be a great castle. Didn't matter. But it was yours. Only you could go there, you know, and it got your stuff in it that you needed there and so on. And you could build it up bit by bit. You could even alter it, you know, knock down that wall and stick the library, because the library needs being bigger. The library always needs to be bigger. There is no such thing as too many books. That is an oxymoron. I know about these things. So, built up this little citadel sanctuary place. And it is so real in my head, I could describe every detail to it to you now. I'm not going to, but I could. And it means, a little while ago, I went on a bus journey, so I hadn't got to think about anything other than getting off the bus at the end of the trip. I could just, I closed my eyes, but I didn't even need to close my eyes. I was there. I didn't need to do 10 steps or anything. I was there, and I could enjoy being there and wandering through the rooms and looking out the window and, whatever. The only thing was somebody put a book back the wrong place on the shelf. Should never let people in there, other than me. That's another way of using Pathworking. It's building up a safe space in your head. And then it's good to have a safe space you can go to whenever you want. Yeah? So that become quite a popular one. And I always think once a scenario has been set up for a Pathworking, you do then need it to go a little bit freeform and fade out on the detail. The doors are no longer described because people by then are there and they've got a picture of what the door is. And if you start describing your door, it clashes. Yeah? So you just say, you're going through a door. There is a tree there. You're not saying what sort of tree it is or whether it's in bud or anything, yeah? So you fade out the details so it doesn't clash with what people are already experiencing. I also like there to be a little bit of a healing, for want of a better word, sequence in it. So you come back feeling better than, when you went down. Yeah, we can all do with that, And that can be in a million different ways. It could be you're a hawk in the sky and you fly through a cloud and the cloud fills every feather with beautiful, wafting, lovely thoughts or something, That's a cleaning secret. It could be a light shining on you or something. It could be Damn the Bard singing a song for you, whatever. Well, that'll make you feel healed, wouldn't it, So, there's those steps, and then there's, of course, the coming back, and we need, particularly within a group, to make sure everybody has come back, and they're not suddenly jolted into life by the light going on, the crash of the kettle as you put it on for a cup of tea. No, let people come up gradually at their own speed, but make sure they're all back in the room. If you have a problem with coming, when you got back of feeling, have a cup of tea and a biscuit. That's the best earthing better, of all. Or just stick your fingers in the soil if you're outside somewhere. And then there's that little feedback sequence as well. So, yeah, that's the sort of things I mean by Pathworking. And there's a million different variations. I mean, this one's got about, 50 or 60, paths laid out there, but it's infinitely variable and you could take a bit out of one and add it to a bit of another and trail them off. One thing I will warn you though, is if you do Pathworking by yourself, is to be careful of the time. There's an infamous thing. Also have used Pathworking to help people practically on a solo basis. There was a lady who was scared of spiders, and I tried to get her to desensitise by imagining larger and larger spiders within a pathway, a rubber spider first, and so on. I desensitised myself to going over humpback bridges. I always had a fear since I was a kid. I really don't like going over humpback bridge or going down too fast in a lift, and scenic railway is my idea of hell. So I desensitised myself to that until I ended up one day, went out, got into my old banger of a car and drove to the nearest humpback bridge and drove over it fast 3 or 4 times. Right, that's no longer going to be a worry. But the danger of doing Pathworkings by yourself in your house when there's nobody there, as you can drift off for hours. I once did a Pathworking just to give me a bit more reassurance and confidence because I was going for a job interview. Well, a fantastic job. I'd been out of work for a little while. I got made redundant. And so, hey, they want a cleaner. Right, I'll be the best cleaner, that they've ever had come to an interview. I'd never been a cleaner before, but, So I had a bit of music, went down, and I drifted off. I must have dozed off at the end of it, frankly. I suddenly come to with about 10 minutes to change my clothes, wash my face and get to where the interview was because I drifted off. And what I started to do, in those days, I remember the old stereos with a twin cassette deck on them. They're really useful because you could have your music on one, and I used to have a wake-up one on the other. So the music was only 30 minutes long, so the maximum I was going to go down for was 30 minutes. But then I used to have another bit of music on the other one, which used to fire off, which was a bit of, come on, wake up, Pete, wake up, you know, sort of thing, on, you know, you're coming back, and so on. I don't really know what the modern technical equivalent is, really. Maybe you could set the timer on your phone to go off after a half an hour and go, come on, get out of bed, whatever. So, yeah, so there are lots of practical things to think, but you do have to be careful sometimes in not, you know, pushing people too much one way or the other. Everybody's going to experience them differently. And then, of course, we also get into, if you're a pagan, always quite a few of you are pagans, aren't you, here today? I noticed a couple earlier got them funny Wiccan Death Stars hanging around their neck. Yeah, so what mythology are you going to use? You know, if you're going to decide to, you know, like in my path, Yggdrasil, the great tree of life, the 9 words of Yggdrasil, with Nidhogg ignoring its roots, as you'll have found last night in the quiz, you've got to make sure that other people are on the same page, because if they're from a Celtic path, they wonder what the hell you're going on about. Yeah, and I'm glad I'm not from a Celtic path, because I wouldn't be able to pronounce half those bloody names. And forget the Irish ones. So yeah, but it is a great way to explore your mythology, is to go, right, today I will go to the gates of Anun, you know, I will go to Yggdrasil, I will, you know, whatever, and explore a little bit of your mythology, and so on. Or try to meet a character from the mythology, a god, a goddess, or whatever, and try and have a conversation with them. So there's all those possibilities. Pathworking is fantastic. And the great thing is, it costs bugger all, which is a good qualification for it. You know, there are no expensive gurus, you know. I'm sometimes sort of said to be, you know, one of the fathers of pathworking in England because I wrote the first book, basically. But, you know, I'm just me, and you don't need me to do a pathworking, you know. Bugger off and do it, you know, after this, if you've never done one before. So, you fancy having a little go? Let me have a slurp. Because you find it's very, very important to keep the leader of the pathworking in drink. I forgot to put that in the book, but that should have been in large letters on the 3rd page. Please don't tell my heathen mates that I was seen in public drinking a non-alcoholic drink. Reminder of those essential steps there. Okay, so focus on what you like, really, but I suggest you close your eyes. I'll promise not to nick your bag or your wallet while you're gone. And close your eyes and relax, however you like to. You know, sprawl your legs out. Let your shoulders go down. You know, you don't need your shoulders upright. You can slouch, you can lay back. Nobody's going to call you a slob today. We're all pagans. Yeah. And get into a bit of a nice breathing rhythm. What I normally like to do, you all got your own ways of maybe you're doing this, but if you haven't, I suggest that you take a fairly deep breath in through the nose, hold it, and then let it out gradually through your mouth. In, hold, and out. Now, it shouldn't be hurting you. You shouldn't be doing it so hard that you're hurting yourself. But what we're trying to do is get your body in rhythm, slowing your heart rate down, and flushing all the old stale air out of your lungs and getting some good fresh air in the smell of beer and so on, healthy things. While you're doing that, just think about your feet. They're all sort of heavy and leaden, warm, you know, and that sort of warm, sort of numbness is creeping up from your feet, through your ankles, up to your knees, and nothing to worry about. You're completely safe. You're in control, and that stillness, that warmth, goes up your legs into your thighs, and you're feeling at peace and relaxed. You're safe with friends. Keep the breathing. You can hear the sound of your heartbeat slowing down as that numbness goes through your hips, gives them a bit of ease from all those aches and pains, up into your tummy and your chest, and your shoulders are slumping, and your head can loll with your chin down and just feels nicely fuzzy. And finally, that warm fuzziness flows down your arms, through your elbows and wrists and into your fingers. And so you're completely relaxed and ready for a little gentle adventure. And in fact, what you see is you're in the countryside. Ahead of you there's a bit of a dip because you're near the top of a little ridge. But on the top of that ridge there's a big old oak tree, very old oak tree. You see its gnarled old trunk, the huge branches spreading out above you. It's in leaf, and because it's on top of a ridge, the roots have spread to cling to the soil because it's got a lot to support. So you can see where the roots have broken the soil in places. Get a little bit closer and you can see they sort of form steps between themselves, radiating around the tree. And what I'd like you to do is place your right hand onto the trunk of the tree. Feel the rough bark. Feel the tree. And look to your left, and you can see you can just step down a little bit over one of the roots that's sticking out. So take that step, but you can keep yourself steady by keeping your right hand on the tree, because we're going to spiral down clockwise, deocer-wise, around that tree, making 10 steps, and you've just taken the first. So that's 10, and another is 9, and another is 7. And already you're a little bit down over the ridge, with the land behind you fading out. And 5, and 4, and 3, and you're nearly halfway round the tree now, and you can see towards the bottom where you're heading, where the roots are still coming out down that ridge bank, that there's a bit of a gap between them, a little hollow. So we're heading for there. And 2, and 1, and you're there. And that little gap, you can just about squeeze through it. Turn yourself sideways, and you can just about squeeze through it. Don't worry, there's nothing in there to harm you. Right, we're into the gap, and there's a bit of light because there must be a woodpecker hole or something like that further up the tree. It's letting a bit of light in. And to your surprise, you see there's like a little track going down even deeper from that hole in the tree, just like a little corridor. If you stoop a little bit, you only need to stoop for a couple of yards, and it will widen out into a much bigger space below. It's a bit darker there, but there's a slight glow that seems to light it a bit from a stone that's standing in the middle. The stone looks a bit curious, and you can see there are some markings on it of some description. So in your own time, when you go up the stone, have a good look round it, on top and round the sides, and see what you make of the markings. Try and remember those markings for later if you can. Far side of the stone, now that you're next to it, you thought maybe it was a bundle of rags in the corner, but it's just moved. Some sort of little character there. Don't worry, they're more afraid of you than you are of them. By a long shot, they're quite shy, in fact. So you might like to reassure them that you don't mean any harm and that you're there for friendly purposes. And if you're lucky, they might invite you to ask them one question. You'll only get one question. Their answer might make sense or it might not. But think of that question really carefully, what you want to ask, and then ask it. Good. Now, be polite. Thank them very much. Reassure them that you won't tell anybody else where they are. Their secret's safe, as is yours. Oh, hang on. They're pointing to another side of the chamber. Just walk over there, humour them. In the side of the chamber, there's a bit of a cleft and some water dripping down. There's a cup that you can use. Catch some of the water and have a little drink of it. You'll find although it's water, it's really sweet and refreshing. Makes you feel really good. As it goes down, it seems to affect your whole body, sort of seems to refresh you and, ease the old aches and pains a bit. Make you think a bit clearer. Drink as much as you like. Okay. If you put the cup down for the next person to use, I'm sorry, but we've got to go back up now. So if you look for the light of the little passage, make your way back up there. Turn yourself sideways so you can get through that gap in the tree trunk. That's right. When you're outside, steady yourself with your left hand this time against the tree trunk. We're going to go back up those 10 steps made by the roots of the old oak tree. So it's 10, 9, 8. And the little gap has disappeared from view already. 7, 6, 5, and you're halfway back up the bank. 4, 3, 2, and you're nearly back. And 1, and you're back standing at the side of that lovely old oak tree. When you're ready, as you feel comfortable, open your eyes and remember all you've seen and done. Good. Now, something I should have mentioned, if you don't get down on a pathworking, you know, all you've got to do is sit there and wait for everybody else, basically. And the best of us, myself included, don't get down every time. There can be a reason for that. You know, you've had too busy a day, something's on your mind, and for some reason it don't work. Okay, don't despair. Next time it will. We all have those days, you know. So don't be upset if occasionally you don't get down. Just be polite and let the others have their due. Now, that was a very basic and very short pathworking, but you could get a lot into that. Well, it doesn't have to be over complex. You know, you can have complex ones. You can be changed into animals. You're skiing down the crest of run, you know, whatever. But, you know, that's just a little example of what you can do. And there are, as I say, lots of uses for pathworkings. Got some of them up here. Relaxing anxious patients. That's not just relaxing other anxious patients, you can relax yourself because you can just repeat those 10 steps. I'll tell you, I've had cancer 3 times. It's bloody terrifying when you're going in for the help. And I don't really like people around me at that stage. I prefer to sit there or lay there in the bed or whatever and go 10, 9 to myself and imagine a nice place, you know, and it is going to be a happy Caribbean island with the sunshine down on me. It's not going to be anything complicated. I just want myself somewhere better than a hospital bed where people are going to poke things at me. So yeah, you can do that. Anxious people is a great one for, and as I say, midwives use it for anxious mums and so on. Rehearsing interviews, but don't forget, make sure you're all back inside. Desensitisation. I mentioned about spiders or humpback bridges. You know, it could be anything. It could be desensitisation of yourself to a person you find particularly obnoxious, but that you have to see as part of your job, you know. Right, you know, I'll do a pathworking that will turn them into a blancmange in front of my eyes, and every time I see them in future, they will not be that nasty, obnoxious person. They will be a pink, wobbly blancmange. It works. I've done it. You know, it's funny because I saw a thing on TV only about 6 months ago by a sports coach who teaches Olympic athletes, and it was athletic stuff, long jump and things like that. And he said, oh yeah, it's not all physical, we get in their heads now. He says, I get them to rehearse the jump in their heads. He says, close their eyes and, oh, you buggy, you're using pathworking, you know, and they're using it there. And apparently they've actually physically noticed percentage, you know, a small 1% increased result in it. One of these days somebody will do some proper scientific research on the effects of pathworking, but what we do know is people who enter meditative states, and this has been measured by authorities here and in the States and so on, is it tends to lower anxiety and to lower the speed of the heartbeat slightly, but best of all, lower high blood pressure. And high blood pressure is a major problem to lots of people today. So, you know, if it only does those things for you, and it's not medication you've got to pay for or stuff down your throat full of other chemicals and so on, it seems a better bet to me. I'm all for using medical science, but you know, if you can give it help along the way, it seems a good idea to do. So I think I'm about the end of my time here. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. But better still, as a favour to me, can you go away and try it out for yourself? Yeah? And if you can't remember what I've said, it's all in the book.